Okay. So welcome everybody. We're doing Sadi Tet, the end of it. Um, and I want to. Last time we basically, really, actually, last time. I mean, last time um, you did um, Birya, but time before that we did Sadi Tet, and we really just did the Hey in the tour. So I want to just read. I want to go over the Shulchan Aruch Hey, and then get into Vav. So everyone look at the Shulchan Aruch, Sif Hey. And I'll start off reading a little bit, just to, you know, uh, maybe you guys will tell me some comments. Ein mevatlin isser lechatchila, he says. So you can't mevatel an isser lechatchila. You can't put like some non-kosher food into water or something to mevatel, or into soup. Va'afilu nafal letoch heter she'ein bo shi'ur levatlo. Ein mosifim alav heter kedei levatlo. So even if it would fall in on its own, it's interesting language because he doesn't say you put it in b'shogeg. He says it fell, which there's a debate about. Is there a difference between it falling in on its own versus you putting it in by mistake? Shogeg. But he says dafka, maybe not dafka, but he says it fell in. The aim and in what did it fall into? Something that was not enough to mevatel. He says, "Aim no sifim alav." You might think I can add water or something to it. Kedei levatlo. You can't do that. Va'avaru bitlo, but if you did it anyway against the halacha, potentially it's a Torah actually. Oh, shiriba alav. So you put it into, now he's putting two together. You put it into a big container. Put the isser into, let's say, 60 times its size, or riba alav. You added more after it fell in. In b'shogeg, so whether it's either case, they're both forbidden. So either case is the same din. If you did it b'shogeg, if you added to it or you put it in b'shogeg, it's mutter. Ve'im b'mezid asur. But if you did it intentionally, it's asur. And we saw that's kind of a knas, so that you shouldn't do that. But really, midoraita, it would be batal. Even though you're not supposed to mevatel an isser lechatchila, if you did do it, midoraita, it is batel. But we have to make a kanas that it's only if it's shogig, then it'd be mutter, amazing to be asr. To who is it asr? The mevatel atzmo, to the one who did it. Imu shelo, if it's his. V'ken lemisha mitbatel bishvilo. And also, if I do it for somebody asked me to mevatel this, and I do it for him, then it's also for him. Or basurin lemochro. And the Ramah says it's forbidden to sell it. Va'asurim lemochro gam kein liyisrael acher shelo yehneh mimashe bitlo. You can't sell to another Jew because presumably, if you sell to a Jew, you're going to sell it at a higher price, right? And so you're benefiting from the bittel. If you sold to a goy, maybe you're not benefiting from the bittel because he could have eaten it before the bittel or after the bittel. Joel?
Well, that's the shach, isn't it? There, that's the in Yud Bet, I think. Because it's a big question. Like, it's not asur lahat behana'ah. Like, what's the big deal, right? It's asur be'achila. And so, like, why is the Rama coming in here to say you can't sell it to a Jew? Uh,
Because then you're neheneh, so then you're benefiting from the bittul. It's
yeah,
usher to you, right?
yeah.
It's just right. What about if you sell it to a Jew at a lower price? What if you sell it to the Jew at the price that a goy would pay for it? Presumably, that would be mutter.
The Shach says that, right? He says, "Di lav hachi ein tam lo limkor Israel, right? Dehalo hani masav harayim, right? You
Hmm.
benefit from your bad actions if you sell it. That's what he's talking about. If you sell it at not at a higher price than a non-Jew would pay for it. So
Good, right? Well, I read that shach. That's probably why I
I
said it.
figured, you know.
Um, and Ruben, you have a question?
Yes, I don't understand why it's all right if you sell it at a lower price. Are you not still benefiting from it? Are you not still in some way potentially incentivized to do it again?
No, because if you hadn't mevatel it, then you would have had this isser food. You would have sold it to the goy at $10. Now the fact that you mevatel the isser and it's now worth more because now it's kosher, so it's worth $12. But you're selling it for $10, so you didn't benefit. You would have sold it before the bittul for $10.
Uh-huh. Okay.
In other words, when it was in its isser state, you could have sold it to a guy at $10. In other words, what I'm saying is not mostly concerned with who you sell it to; it's mostly concerned with the price that you sell it for. You have to not benefit from the fact that you've created a heter item here. Okay, and now the Ramon comes in and he says, "V'dafka shenitarev yavish biyavish." This is only if it's yavish biyavish. Oh, afilu lach balach. V'manda amar she'ein omrim bo chaticha nase nevela. Kedilael Siman Sadi Bet. We didn't learn Siman Sadi Bet. About there, it says that there's some that would say that in Lach Balach you don't say Hanan in Shari Suri because if you think, what is Lach Balach? Why should Lach Balach be different from, or Yavish B'Yavish? Well, let's just stick with Lach Balach. Why should Lach Balach be different from, let's say, a drop that fell into a piece of meat? Why would you be more likely to say Hanan by a drop that fell into a piece of meat than by Lach Balach? In other words, what does it mean, Hanan? That if
You need a
um,
chaticha.
you have a chaticha, right? The words chaticha nase nevela,
Y-
right? It is a chaticha.
Yet
There's no
something, some finite delimited object that was permitted. Now it's forbidden, and now it's a forbidden piece that is in your mixture, as opposed to a drop of something prohibited that just falls into a big already liquid mixture of things that it's not defined in the same way. What would it be? What would it be? What is
right.
that?
How is it defined?
Yeah.
Why is lach balach you're going to get bittul? What he's saying is the dafka lach balach or yesh b'yesh. But let's stick with lach balach. Dafka lach balach is what we were talking up till now. Because then when you add more water to the mixture, what happens to the yisr? It spreads throughout. The Isser spreads throughout more stuff, so it can be separated. It can be like it can be not pulverized, but like it's dissolvable in this mixture. It's all liquids, so you're
Permutable.
adding more liquid. It becomes just more thoroughly dissolved. So that's why this later adding of water will work. And by yavish b'yavish also because one of them was usher. You just didn't know which one was usher, right? What's yavish b'yavish? You have like three or four chatichot. One of them is usher, and you don't know which one it is. So, well, in that case, actually, three or four would be already bata. What must be the case of yavish b'yavish? Actually, what would the only case of yavish b'yavish not be batel? One and one isser and one heter. You don't know. So then it's usher. But now now
Also,
accidentally you
things
added
like
what?
flour, right? Where it's like you can't separate them
Yeah, yavish
sometimes.
flour. I don't want
That
to
are
get
it's
into
considered,
flour.
it's considered kind of like lach balach because of
Yeah,
the
let's think of
nature.
flour as lach balach. I don't want to.
Okay.
Let's maybe that's another discussion for another time. Maybe when we do deciding bet, we'll talk about that. But yavish be yavish, it's different because yavish be yavish, like one, and it was usher. Now you added a couple more heter by accident. Now it's batel. So there's no reason not to say it's batel because like what are you going to say? The first one became it. The first in the first case, but in the first instance when you had one and one. So there was an Isser, and the other one became Usser, but it wasn't really Usser. It didn't like magically become Usser. It was just you couldn't eat it because you didn't know which one was the Heter, which one was the Isser. So now that you have more, there's no shaykhs of Hanan in such a case. Now that you have more, so now what is Bata? So that's the case that he was talking about, says the Ramah. But not what case? The classic case of Hanan, where everybody agrees, or not everybody, but where there is Hanan, according to more people, אבל בחתיכה שבעלה איסר, לא מהנה שנתווסף אחר כך ההתר. Doesn't help that you add more what? More pieces, more water. What would you say? Doesn't help that you add more what?
I assume water.
Why not? Okay, why not pieces?
Because if we're talking about diluting the isur with more heter, there's only really this idea of ta'am or
Right. No, but
diluting
what
the
would be the
isur.
case? What would be the case if you added more pieces?
That's mean b'mino.
Not, yeah, fine, maybe no, but it's also
Could be.
yavish b'yavish. It's also yavish
Yeah,
b'yavish then. If you added more pieces,
and
then it's
transfer.
essentially yavish b'yavish, and then it would be back to the case that he was saying in Mutter. So fine, the piece. I mean, you added more pieces, so now you have to add enough pieces to mevatel the whole piece. Okay, that could be what he's saying actually, but it could also be saying yavish b'yavish that you're adding more water. It's a little bit complicated here. What exactly is this problematic case? We'll see that what the Shach says in a minute. But aval, okay, aval. Anyway, so aval again. I'm reading again. Aval haticha shebala iser lo mahane shenitfasef achar kach heter. Daha amrinan be haticha nasei nevela. That we for sure say is haticha nasei nevela, says the Rama. Well, therefore, it doesn't help that you add more water, even if you did it b'shogeg. Everything we said, you did b'shogeg, you be mutter, mezi, aser. Yeah, but if it's a piece, it doesn't help you added water. Then he goes on. V'yesh amrim da'afilu b'makom delo amrinan chaticha nase nevela. Let's say lach balach or something. Lo mahani aheter levatel ela im nitfasef kodem shenoda tarovet. Once you know about it, then what happens? Then it becomes Hanan even by Lach Balach. And therefore it doesn't help that you add it now. You add it now, it's too late. The whole thing became Aser. Adding now is just like adding against a whole pot of Isser, once you know about it. Avalim Noda Hatarovet Kodem Lo Mahani Mashid Joseph Acharkach Lefi V'Lefi Zeh Hayat Sarich HaChacham Hamore Levatel Isser. Somebody wants to mevatel it Lachkor Im Nitvasef HaHeter Achar Shenodem. Fine. That's we saw that idea. So wait, let's go back to that question we said about uh, what exactly is your mitasef? You're adding when it's a chaticha, a piece that fell on a piece. Good questions?
Just about the end of that Ramah, which is, it says heter le'achar shenoda v'lo nahagu kain. So at least the Ramah wasn't
Right. Lo nagu kain what? What do you think that means, lo nagu kain?
I think it's probably he said this in the Darchei Moshe that lechatchila we should be doing it, but it just hasn't been done.
What? Not lo
The
nagu kain.
the chakira.
The chakira, right. In other words, he's not negating the din of noda, not noda. He's just negating the din of whether we do the chakira or not. We don't have to investigate. Actually, let's go back to Shach Yud Gimel for a second. It's a very short one. Yud Gimel, he says, that was back where we said, Lamanda Amar She'ein Omrim Bo Haticha Nase Nevela. And then he says, the Shach says, B'kaimelan Hachi, Bishar Isurim, Behefsid Meruba Kedlael. So what does that mean? Huh? Oh, glimmer in your eye. No?
Did you just call my name?
Yeah.
Oh, I think he's saying the Shach is agreeing with the Ramah, who agrees with the Ri that there is Hanan and Shari Surim, but the Shach is just putting a caveat that except you would actually agree with Rabbeinu Ephraim in a case of financial or economic significant financial loss.
Well, yeah, but yeah, okay, I guess I agree with you, sort of, but tighten it. About which two cases? About which two cases does he, in a financial loss, does he agree with Rabbeinu Ephraim that there's no Hanan? Not about all cases, not about all Hanan in Shar Isurim.
You're saying lach belach and yavesh beyavesh?
Exactly. Only in Lach Balach and Yavish Beyavish, which was the exception. In other words, then if it's Hefsed Meruba, he will actually be Mekil and say no Hanan. But a regular Hefsed, a regular loss, he won't be. So this is a very important shach here, actually, because he's telling you that some, how do you say, some escape hatches for the din of Hanan B'Shar Yisuri. If it's a Hefsed Meruba and it's Lach Balach or Yavish B'Yavish, we cannot say Hanan. Okay, that's a very important shach, actually, to remember. But let's look at Yud Dalet. Yud Dalet, he says like this. About, it's okay that I'm reading? Yeah, it's okay. Okay. Sometimes hard to hear the same voice. So let's look at Yud Dalet again. Yud Dalet, what were we talking about? Aval Hatich. I'm just reading now in the Ramah for a second, where the Yud Dalet goes on. Aval Haticha shebala iser lo mahani shenitfasef achar kach haheter. So he says like this: L'chora kasha ma inyan ze l'chanan. What does that have to do with Chanan? Da'afilu lamanda amar de lo amrinan Chanan b'shari surim. Even if we wouldn't say Chanan b'shari surim, like who famously doesn't say that? Rabbeinu Ephraim and the Shulchan Aruch himself. Mikol makol haticha shebala iser. Wait a second. How are you going to try to save this haticha? How in the world are you going to try to save this haticha by adding more water? Whether it's water or pieces, it's not going to save the piece. We didn't get there yet. But what they basically say, what the Rashba says, and what the Shulchan Aruch agrees to, is that even if you don't say Hanan, we're never going to be sure that the Isser got out of the piece. If it's an actual piece that absorbed Isser, and even if I add all the water in the world, that piece, maybe the Isser didn't fully leave that piece, and so the piece will remain Isser. So why would he, why is he, what's the Havamina lo mahanish fasef achar kach heter? Obviously, according to everybody, it won't help because the piece will stay Isser. How would it possibly be helpful to add more water? Everyone got the question? Like there's no Havamina, he's really saying. Right? That's what he just said. That's the Rashba. That the Isser never fully leaves the piece. Ella harav ata lashmu'inan dechaticha shebala Isser v'nitfasef achar kach heter da'afilu atosefet asur ki lecha shishim keneged kol hachaticha. What he's saying is if you added more water accidentally, the water would be asur. Don't think that the water would be mutter. If you accidentally added more water to your soup, you might think that the water would be mutter as long as you had 60 against the original drop. And he says, no, if we hold Hanan, then you need 60 against the whole piece to permit the water, but not to permit the piece. But if you don't hold Hanan, then you would only need 60 against the original drop. And that's what the Ramah is saying. Questions? Joel.
No, I was thinking about this, and I think since this whole thing is about somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, right? This is about the Baal Havait, right? Who doesn't know, that they're not supposed to do this in the first place, potentially, or maybe they do know, or they, it makes sense that they wouldn't think because if you did 60 against the whole piece, then you'd be fine, right?
Well, that's what I was about to say.
Exactly. And so I think it makes sense, right, that somebody would say, oh, I had like a piece of chalev drop on this piece of meat and get cooked with it. I'm just going to dump a bunch of water on it to be batel, but just enough against the chalev. That would be the person's automatic response, not against the piece. And it would make sense to me that would be the case we're dealing with here. So
Yeah, but that's exactly. But he's saying, but that won't help. That havamina that person has a foolish thought.
exactly, it doesn't help at all. Yeah.
And
So
so, but his point is the Ramah is trying to speak only in the world of Hanan Bashar Suri, and that problem would arise even for
Asar
the
B'chalaf.
Ramah, even for the Mechaber,
Yeah.
even for the Shulchan Aruch himself.
So
That's kind of the Shach's question. Why are you specifying specifically by Hanan Bashar Suri that now all of a sudden the water doesn't help? It would never help.
no, but it would help if you don't say Hanan B'Shari Surim,
Then you
if
only need 60 against the drop.
that's the drop of
Well,
Chayla.
that's kind of that's his answer. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm just saying that actually sounds like a reasonable case that somebody would dump enough water against the Isur, not against the whole piece, if they were trying to do something.
Although, wait a second, are we talking about the Mezid or Bashogeg?
Good. Well, it depends on who we're permitting it to at the end of the day. So, but even
Right.
B'Shogeg.
Okay. Right. Okay. Just let me finish the last couple words. Not the whole thing, but just a few more words. Aval im riba, where I left off. Aval im riba lav shog b'shogeg neged kol masha nase nevela. In other words, against the whole piece, if you put 60 against that, belach lamanda amar chanan, whether it's lach belach, if you say chanan in lach belach, but can afilu basar b'chalav, even if it be basar b'chalav belach belach, hakol mutar. So if it's lach balach and you add, what does he say you have to add? Keneged kol mashana, kol the chanan. You'd have to add against all the chanan. In other words, not just the original drop, even though it's lach balach. Aval b'chaticha, but in our case that he's talking about b'chaticha, shebala iser afilu riba alav shishim neged kol chaticha haticha atzma asura. It never becomes, the haticha remains asur. Kedulakama. Makol makom mashe nirsham kan b'shulchan aruch Shuvat Rashba Siman. Okay, I'll stop there. So basically, what he's saying is that it's hard to read the Ramah, understand what he's talking about, and the way to understand it is that the person is trying to add water to save his soup. In other words, he's got like chicken soup with a piece of meat in it that the meat became usser, and now he wants to add water to the soup to save his soup. He can't save the piece, but he can save the soup by adding water. And how much water does he have to add? Well, it's not going to work if he adds enough water against the drop. He's going to have to add enough water against the whole piece, which would only work if the piece is pretty small. Okay, that is the Shulchan Aruch of Seifim. Now, I want. Now let's go back to the tour. Let's go back to the tour, and we're looking at Siva. And I want to know, I didn't assign it actually, but maybe you read. Did anybody read through the Beit Yosef on Sif Tav and would like to summarize all the opinions that he brings, or some of the opinions? We're talking, the question in Sif Tav is, well, if you look at Sif Tav, it says like this: Kasav harashba, aval davar she'ikar isuro eno ela midrabanan, not like what we were talking about in Sif Hey, where it was directed. But he says Ikar Isro Eno Elamid Rabbanan. There's a very important meaning of that word Ikar Isro. That essentially means that it's completely a rabbinic law and not related to or based on a Torah law. Kagon Gavina Shel Goyim, right? Gavina Shel Goyim is totally mutter, really. But they only prohibited it because of a chashash that's not really a chashash. That's according to one opinion. V'shamno shel gid. Shamno shel gid is mutter, really, from the Torah. There's no reason that the shamno shel gid should be us.
Nachum, we're for some reason when you turn to the side, I think we're getting like a kind of a jumbled audio.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for telling me. I'll put the book in a different place. So again, V'katav Rashba. Aval davar shikaro is isuro eno ela midrabanan kagon gavina shel goyim v'shamno shel gid. Both things that are essentially not related to any Torah prohibition. Ein marvim otam beheter kidei levatlo. Of course, you can't intentionally mevatel them. Avar, and the same din would apply that we said previously. Avar va'avaro beheter. If you did violate the law and you mixed it with heter, kedei levatlo b'shogig mutar, b'shogig mutar b'mezid asur. If you did it b'shogig b'mutar b'mezid asur, just like we saw by an isur d'oraita. So far, no difference. And the key line here is the next part. Nafal me'atzmo beheter. But if it fell of its own accord into heter, afal pi she'ein beheter, kedei levatlo, there's not enough in the heter to cancel it. Mutar lahosif beheter. Now you got a problem, right? It's not enough there to mevatlo it. So mutar lahosif beheter kedei lachshiro. So you can't like intentionally, but this already happened. Now it's like a b'diavad situation. It's already after the fact. You can add more water and save it, right? Intentionally. We didn't say that before. Before we said b'shogig. Here we're saying mutar lo sif. You know what you're doing it b'kavana, and it's permitted to do this. Kedei lahachshiro, kedei chazinan be'etzim shenashru min hadeke. Like we see by the case of the branches that fell off the palm tree into the oven, b'toch tanor b'yom tov. Shemutar laharbot aleim. These branches are muksa, but you can add to them eitzim muchanim, other branches that were set aside before Yom Tov for the purpose of burning, which are mutter now. So you could mix those with the dekel branches that fell on Shabbat, which are muksa because they're like nolad, right? They came off, they're like nolad. Eitzim muchanim lahatiram. And that's what the Gemara says. You could do that. And then the Rosh disagrees. But before we get to that, we saw this. What are these opinions? What the Beit Yosef brings a whole bunch of opinions about what exactly is allowed to be mevatel. Is it every Isur d'Rabbanan? Is it only some Isur d'Rabbanans? Now, not all Isur d'Rabbanans are created equal, right? Some Isur d'Rabbanans are Isurei d'Rabbanan, you should say. Some Isurei d'Rabbanan are connected to or based on a Torah law, and some are just out of thin air, gezeros d'Rabbanan. So there's various opinions. There's the Rambam, the Rabbeinu Simcha, the Ri, the Ravya, Hagat Maimoniot, the Rashba. Anybody look at any of these? No? Nobody look at these? Okay. So we're not going to read the whole thing here because it's too long, but I'll tell you what the opinions are. Which we don't normally do, but it's sometimes good to see just the range of opinions. The Rambam actually is the most controversial opinion. Wait, Ari, yeah?
Can we talk first a little bit about the Rashba and why you could add, like you basically have half shogeg and half mezi to get the total 60. Does that make sense?
Right. It's something like that. Half shogeg and half mezi.
Well, why is it any different? Like after the shogeg, I'm still mavato. I still have Isser. I'm just adding more. So why?
Well, what's the most basic technical reason before we get into a svara reason? What's the technical reason that we're going to allow it? What the Torah said. Kidirainu, like we saw.
Because I'm not sure I understand.
So there's a Gemara I didn't assign.
Right, the 18, yeah, that's right.
There's a Gemara,
but that
so
case
the technical reason is because the Gemara tells us you can do it. That's the technical reason. If the Gemara says you can do it, you don't have to, as one rabbi once told me, you don't have to be firmer than the Gemara. The Gemara says you can do it, you can do it. I mean, of course, sometimes we are firmer than the Gemara, but only if the poskim tell us so. But the Gemara says you can do it.
Well, just to clarify that case, because it seems to me to be a little bit different.
Well, that's what the Rosh says.
I can now add in more branches, why do I need to add more branches?
Well, because if you're burning this, let's say you're making bread. Let's say it's an oven, it's Yom Tov, and you're making bread. You're making bread on Yom Tov, and you are about to go put your bread in the oven and you're about to light up the oven so you can cook the bread. and all of a sudden these branches fall in, and now you can't burn them because they're muksa. You can't use them. They're
I can't
nola.
get hana from the bread that's coming from the muktzah branches.
Exactly. So what do the rabbis give you eight? So they say put in some more wood, so that mostly you have. It's kind of like you have puzzle in a sukkah. You can have puzzle schach, and then if you add enough heter schach, then all of a sudden it's batel. So you could do that even lachatchila actually, right? You could do that. There's no problem. Nobody says you're mevateling isser lachatchila by a sukkah. Actually, it's a very interesting question. Nobody says by a sukkah that you're mevateling an isser. It's not really an isser. It's just not a kosher sukkah.
I mean, you wouldn't be able to do like, as in, there are various things that you're not supposed to do to machshir a sukkah, like on Yantif, right? Like there's,
I'm
but
not
so
talking about on Yom Tov, right?
I know, but I'm saying that that's the only relevant comparison I feel like, right? Is that you are essentially changing the Isser status of something if you added those on Yantif such that it went from being
No, also cholamod. Also cholamod. It's also to eat there. Now it's mutter to eat there. On cholamod, I put in bread. Anyway, this is a side point. I'm just saying
There's a time aspect that's
on
different.
cholamod, I can't eat in a sukkah that has pasal schach.
No, but I'm saying you could then add the
Exactly, but why isn't it mevatel isser l'chatchila?
because again, being mavatel is a difference
Isser.
between taking something. It's not usser skach, it's puzzle skach. I think
Okay,
taking something from being puzzle to
Could be that,
kosher
yeah.
versus being usser to
Good,
kosher.
good. Yeah, so we can make. Yeah, I think we can make we can make distinctions between them. I'm just saying it's an interesting comparison, not maybe 100% one-to-one comparison, but here also we're saying by this wood that the wood isn't usser, it's just usser to burn it. But you can add more wood, and now the rove will be mutter wood, and now you can make your bread on Yom Tov, says the Gemara. So the rabbis learn from that, the Rishonim learn from that. Oh, in general, when I have a Siddur Rabbanan that already mixed, they see it as the point that it's naflu. What they see as the ikr case there is that it's naflu. Not that I put the branches in there and now I can add more branches to Mbatla, but it fell of its own accord. It's like an act of God that these things come, and I shouldn't like be suffering just because this happened. There should be a way out for me. I shouldn't get my oven be ruined because it could be worse than that. It's muksa machmat gufo. Maybe I can't even remove them. I guess with my foot I could remove them.
But if a little spritz of water falls in my pot,
so they say, oh, the same thing. If Isser, if my friend put a piece of pork on the shelf and then an earthquake happened and the pork fell from the shelf into my soup, it's an act of God. Well, so now we're not going to make you be punished. You can add more water to mavatal the piece of pork.
Not pork. It would be gvinat goyim or something like that.
Sorry, gvinat goyim fell into my soup. Thank you. Not pork.
Oh, so the shogeg is that the Isser fell in? I thought that it was a shogeg water fell in.
No, Isser.
Well, there's shogeg. The Isser is generally not even technical, but it's the falling isn't even shogeg. The falling is just like it fell. Right? Shogeg implies like not necessarily with knowledge. This is just like with no intent, right? It fell. And then shogeg also generally refers to like, did you know it was forbidden to mavatel Isser when you then added things?
Right, exactly. Well, there's different kinds of shogeg, but yeah, it could be that I knew it was usser, but I didn't know what this piece was. I thought this piece was some kind of lack of my knowledge. But right, in fact, there's a whole discussion in the Beit Yosef about whether nefila is regular shogeg or a super shogeg, and kind of nefila is super shogeg. So, like Lexi was saying, that it's nafal. So it's like I said, like I was calling you like an act of God, not something that I even did at all. So then I'm allowed to add more to it. Now, why should that be? Yeah, you could say this. Maybe it's only in that case of where it fell and where. Well, we'll see. But actually, if you want to look on, let's read a little bit more in the tour. The tour says he says, "Va'adoni avi harosh sal katav da'afilu isur derabanan shenitarev isur asur lo sif alav levatlo." You can't generalize from that case in the Gemara. V'lo hetiru ela be'etzim shenashru. It's only that case of the wood that fell. L'toch hatanor. Why? What characterizes that case and distinguishes it from all other cases? Mishum de mikale kale leisura. The isur burns up, and the moment that you're eating, let's say, I'll say it in an extreme way. There's two ways to say this, by the way. It both brought down in the Achronim, but one is that the moment I'm eating the bread, when I'm benefiting from the fire, is when I'm eating the bread, and at that time the isur is long gone. The other way to say it is, even at the moment that the bread is cooking, the fire that is creating the bread is from a piece of wood that has ceased to be a piece of wood. It's only because the wood at that moment burnt that I'm benefiting from it. So the wood isn't even around anymore. Mikale kali, it's evaporated. And that's a special kind of hana'ah that is a less problematic hana'ah that will let you mevatel. So therefore, this case of the burning of the wood is a unique case. So again, so he says like this. He says it's only in the case of the wood, the mikale kali the isura. The isur disappears at the moment I'm benefiting from it, or before I benefit from it. Isur shenit but now there's a whole other din. But anyway, the Rosh says no, you can't learn from this case. So that's already a fundamental argument. Can you learn from it? Can you not? According to the Rosh, forget it. You can never add stuff intentionally. It's just in this one case. But within those opinions that say not like the Rosh. So you have so I'll just tell you like this. The Rambam says, and Rabbeinu Simcha, he says, any rabbinic thing, this is a rabbinic thing, any rabbinic item that fell in, you can mevatel. And the Ri and the Ravya and the Hagot Maimoniot, actually, the Hagaot Maimoniot is understanding the Rambam. So according to him, the Rambam also. So the Rambam comes out on both sides of this question. He says, no, it's only rabbinic without Torah basis. In other words, only rabbinic laws that have no connection to Torah. Because what's this case of the sticks? It's muksa. What's muksa? Muksa is a rabbinic law that the rabbis just invented out of thin air. They didn't say because they didn't see like there's like a muksa concept in the Torah, and they added to the muksa concept. It's a new concept called muksa that the rabbis invented. And so therefore these trees, these branches only refer to other rabbinic laws that are totally rabbinic and have no Torah basis. That's what the Ri says. And the Rashba starts off his words when the Rashba brings the Beit Yosef brings a long piece of Rashba, and he's basically at the beginning he says only rabbinic laws without Torah basis you're allowed to move out to. But by the end of the discussion, he actually comes around the other way and says you can move out till any rabbinic issue. So you can move out till any rabbinic issue. So that's basically there's a few more opinions, but I'll just leave it at that. Now let's look at the Shulchan. Oh, wait, did we do all of that I wanted to do? Just a second.
Rav Nachum?
Yeah, read the tour.
Doesn't the Rashba say at least I'm trying to remember that even though he thinks any rabbinic Isur is you're okay, he said we should be we have a chashash to the people who are Osrim nonetheless, right?
Well, did you read the Drisha on that?
I didn't. I'll take a look. So
his chashash means we're only choshesh for the opinion of the Ramban, who says that you can mevatel intentionally, even if it didn't fall Isser de Rabbanan like Chala Chutz La'aretz, and basically the Drisha comes to take issue with the Beis Yosef's understanding of the Rashba, and I explained the Rashba according to the Drisha and according to the way I understood it, and I personally did not understand the Beis Yosef's problem, and then I was happily to see the Drisha agreed with me, but I explained it lemaskana, put it that way. The Rashba in the end says you can mevatel any Isser Rabbanan if it fell in, like the Rambam. Now, actually, before we get to the Shulchan Aruch, there is a bit of a Beis Yosef I want to read, but I want somebody to read it. Anybody want to read, starting from Katav Bahagol Charidura? Maybe Max, you want to read?
Sure. Okay. Kasa bagos sharidura. Deha Kaimalan kol ha'isurim sheriba alehem shogeg mutarim davka b'davar yavesh yesh len hogachi aval b'davar lach aval lach aval lo b'davar lach o sheyesh v'nesinas tam dekaimalan chasicha atzma nasas nevela v'tzricha kedei bitul hakol ve'afil nisrabash b'shogeg ki demochach b'kama duchtei ad kama shono. Okay, so
we have this rule. We have this rule. Call the shogeg, right? Call shogeg, call the riba, call sheriba alehem shogeg mutarid. Right? If you added by accident, it's mutar, and that's what kind of well, here we're actually talking about intention, but that is dafka in what case?
Davar yavesh.
Right. Why? Why? What's the svara?
Because if you have a davar lach or something that gives tam, then it becomes chanan, and you need to be mevatel the whole piece and not just
right. In other words, by dry things, we kind of said this earlier today. Like by dry things, we don't really say chanan. It's not really chanan. A piece is just you have three pieces next to each other. Two of them are usser, one of them is mutter, so they're all usser. But really, nothing really happened. They're just pieces because of their location and their proximity, and the fact that I don't know the identity of each one that they're usser. But nothing really, no flavor transferred, so it's not really chanan. Go on. With tzricha kedei bitul hakol. I feel in the Torah show you could ad kanashon. Right. V'zeh.
V'zeh nireh kedavar pashut. Delamanda amar chanan v'tzarich shishim keneged kol hachasicha. Afilu nisra b'shogeg kamar.
Right. Once you say chanan, it's chanan. Shogeg doesn't undo that. Go ahead.
Right.
By the way, this goes against an opinion that we saw in Darkei Moshe.
Right, we saw this the other week.
Okay, mihu.
Mihu b'siman tzadibes. Kasafti sheyesh omrim delo amru chanan ela be'isur habalua b'chasicha. Aval lach belach kagon yain b'yain o mayim b'mayim o yavesh b'yavesh kagon hameduma v'hamechumatz lo.
So he says it's not just dry, also wet. It's only by the piece that absorbed a drop. We say chanan. There's yesh omrim like that.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
V'sheyesh omrim shelo amru chanan ela b'dvarim ha-mispashlim davka o tzonen l'socham she'af hu derech bishul. So some people think that you only say chanan when something can be
is cooked.
Right. Or can
is cooked is cooked together or fell in such a way together in a warm situation that it's like cooking.
Yeah.
In other words, you need to have cooking, but dry pieces that are cold, we don't say chanan.
Right.
Okay, fine.
Right. Okay.
Keep going.
V'sham nisparu svaras haposkim be'eze isor amrinan chanan.
Okay, so that's basically just telling you be anticipating tzadi bet when we get to this more. So go on.
Iser shnispatel kagon shayashishim kenegdo ve'nitvasef achar kach min ha'eser v'chulei ad sof hasiman ken kasav harosh besof perak yiranashe ve'atik l'shono besof siman kuvtes b'siyata d'shmaya. I'll get to that piece later.
Okay, go on.
V'kasav haran beperak basra d'avodah zara ahad amar Rav Dimi amar Rabbi Yochanan hame'ara yain nesach mechavis levor afilu kol hayom kulo rishon batel. All right, I'll pause there. So there's this piece in Avodah Zara that Rav Dimi says b'shem Rabbi Yochanan that if you're pouring yain nesach from a barrel into a cistern and you're doing it, I guess, slowly all day, that each each drop that comes out over the course of the day becomes batel,
right?
Anew, I guess.
Presumably, even though you may end up having more Isser than Heter at the end of the day. Okay, go ahead. Upasku.
Yeah. Upasku poskim delay selchat hakavate. But the halacha is not like Rav Dimi.
Oh, so therefore what? What? So we don't say Rishon Batel. What do we say? What's the other klal? Actually, if you want to know the other klal, it's the last sentence in this tour. Read the last sentence in the tour. Isser Shenat Bashel. Shenit Batel.
Choser v'ne'asar, that piece?
Yeah. The last sentence says, if you just read it in the tour, it says, Isur Shenit Batel. It was Batel. Kagon Shaya Sham. Shaya Shishim, sorry. I think it's Shishim. Shishim Kenegdo. There was Shishim Kenegdo. But Nitvasef Bo Achar Kach Mina Isser. But some more Isser came. Choser v'ne'asar. Veloshna min b'mino. O min b'sheino mino. Bein v'lach bein b'yam. In all cases, we have an idea called min matzah et mino. The min, the Isser min, finds its friend. There's a piece of pork fell in, and then another piece of pork fell in. They meet up in the pot, and they become two pieces of pork, and they become a larger quantity. And now there's not enough against the two pieces, even though the first piece was originally bata. So it's choser v'nior. It returns and awakens and becomes usser again. And it had been mutter, and now it became usser. So it's choser v'nior. So that's the opposite idea of kama or rishon. Sometimes we say rishon bata. Sometimes we say kama bata. Both concepts are rejected halacha. Okay, with that. Now here's the place where you're going to see something, the fireworks or something exciting a little bit. Go ahead, with that.
V'dat arrived afal gav delay silchas hakavate le'inyan yain b'yayin mihu gabe yayin b'mayim u'mayim b'yayin v'chein l'chol isur shenimuach kagon chela v'dam v'chayotze behem hilchasa kivase she'im yipola isur l'soch heter me'at she'ein bo nosein tam b'shas nefila afal pi shenafal bo isur kol hayom kulo mutter rishon batel v'kevan shenis batel harehu heter gamor.
Oh, hare, that's the key explanation. The kevan shenit batel harehu heter gamor. Once it's batel, it's become heter. It is actually, in a way, how do you explain this? How does it become heter? It's a piece of pork. How does a piece of pork become heter? It's why we should say no. We should say choser v'nior. It's still a piece of pork. It'll find its other piece of pork and become two pieces of pork. Well, what is the explanation that it becomes heter gamor? This is a svara. Now I'm asking for a svara. Jacob, you got an idea? Something. Think of something, Jacob. It's not such a difficult svara here. Not looking for anything too exciting. Ari, what do you have?
I think sort of a ta'am theory, like a theory of ta'am that if it really comes apart, it can't come back together.
The ta'am is still in the pot.
Chemistry.
Sure, no, the opposite. Surely, if I add more pork and if I keep adding pepper to my thing, the original pepper I put in, you couldn't taste, and then I put a little bit more, and eventually you start tasting the pepper. So the opposite. The fact that there was
come apart.
Yeah, but they're still there. They
you
don't lose their tom.
You're
saying they lose their tom. Yeah, okay.
Those atoms have to be together in a special pattern. Once they break apart, they don't come back together unless some other,
I want to say, does anybody know there's a famous Ramban, on the Chumash, where he talks about Sir LaAzazel. Anyone know this Ramban on Sir LaAzazel that we bring on Yom Kippur? Pretty famous Ramban, important Ramban. He says like this. He says, how can you send a Sir LaAzazel? Azazel is like Shadim. It's like other gods. how it's avodah zarah. You're actually bringing a korban azazel to this other god. It's the Torah is telling you to do avodah zarah. How can it be? How can you do avodah zarah? So the Ramban answers, if the Torah tells you to do it, then it's not avodah zarah. It's the avodah of the Torah. It's the Torah it's what the Torah tells you to do. So it's not avodah zarah. It's not a foreign avodah. It's the Torah's avodah. Even if it's worshiping, even if it's giving to another god, which is totally shocking concept that he's saying, because he's actually saying they're kind of like, is this other shade? There is the Son of God, and you really are worshiping it, but it's permitted because the Torah says it's permitted. So how can you say the same? So we can say this. So I don't want to get into the Ramban. At your own time, you can look up this Ramban, and it's a shocking and fascinating Ramban. But how does that relate to our case of the meat? Because
you're saying the opposite of me. The taste doesn't matter at this stage.
Exactly, the taste doesn't
definitionally batel. That's halachically.
Right? Why is it's not that pork is intrinsically an usser thing. The Torah says that you can't eat pork, and if the Torah says that it's such and such a circumstance that it's permitted, then the Torah is telling you that this piece of pork is a permitted thing. So it's a permitted thing. So it became a permitted thing. It's not pork anymore. It is pork. Sorry, it is pork, but it's permitted pork. And the permitted pork can't join with forbidden pork to become usher, because actually the permitted pork is permitted. It's a permitted item. And that's what the Ravid says. He says, below die, read just from where you left off. Read a few more words. Below die. Maybe I cheated you by not letting you read the next few words.
I stopped there. Velo dailo she'eno mitzdaref od le'iser ela af leheter mitzdaref levatel iser hanofel bo le'achar mikan.
Right. So you see, it actually joins to mevatel the other pork, because this pork, the first pork, is heter pork. It became a hefetz of mutter, of kosher food. Became an item of kosher food. So it can actually move out. I'm now just it's not magic. It's not magic. It's definitional. It's understanding the Torah as a defining reality for us. Reality is defined for us by the Torah. But this is all the Ravid's opinion. Don't paskin like this. This is the Ravid's opinion. Rabbi Landis. But you got to unmute yourself.
Why can't we say something like there's a concept of when something is overwhelmed or when something is transformed? And that a certain amount is just overwhelmed by everything else, and therefore we don't notice it. I'm just talking about more naturalistic or
that's the opinion, not
or
like
empirical. Or we say that actually something is transformed. It's become part of the other goof. But in the case in which there's more, they have to figure out in either situation. If you say it's overwhelmed, well, then it's easier to say that there's another piece there. Then you just have more of that stuff and it's not overwhelmed anymore. Exactly. If you say transformed, then you can work that out somewhat parallelly, but it's a different way of saying it.
That's exactly.
And so I'm saying it's kind of like an empirical. It seems like it's just a more natural way of looking at it.
Right. Well, the opinion, the first opinion, not like the Ravid, is like the Beis Yosef says. All the poskim say, pasku, right? Pasku a poskim to lace hilchat hakavte. Well, actually, that it's not like Rav Dimi, but the Ravid is basically saying a different idea. He's saying, no, it's not like Rav Dimi. Well, it is. I don't know if it is like Rav Dimi. Whatever. He's saying it's not like Rav Dimi only le'inyan yayin b'yayin, but by everything else, we do hold like Rav Dimi, Amar Rav Yochanan. And then that would be transformative. And that would say that it is transformative. And now we're actually asking a different question, which is why by yayin b'yayin we don't say it's transformative. Why by yayin b'yayin he agrees that you can't say that's where he's rejected. Rav Dimi, according to the Ravid, Rav Dimi Amar Rav Yochanan is only rejected by yayin b'yayin. What's special about yayin b'yayin? And not by yayin b'mayim or mayim b'yayin. So in other words, we say rishon. We don't say rishon batel by yayin b'yayin. Why would that be?
Well,
No,
first of all, we're so used to hearing it that we just accept it. So the question is a good question. We think of yayin b'yayin as along with certain kachim as an exception, but the reason for asking it, and therefore I would say parallel to kachim, it's yayin. They really thought yayin was, something really special, something really unique, powerful.
Okay.
Besides, maybe just on the alcohol basis. Wine
but
and it's universal in terms of looking at, it's not like a gezerah from Kodesh Baruch Hu or gezerah even from the rabbis. People look at wine differently than they look at any other liquid.
Right, but according to
Glenfiddich, but still they didn't have Glenfiddich. Scotland wasn't discovered yet.
Even so, according to the Ravid, by wine and water, if you have water and falls into it all day long, wine, it would be mutter. Only by yayin b'yayin, but by yayin. And in fact, it's an interesting question. You would have, what would be the din according to this? You'd have like a ton of water, and then wine fell into it all day. Eventually, it would look like wine, and it would be wine from Avodah Zarah, but the din would be that it's mutter. What would be the bracha on it? Is it water?
So the okay, and I'll leave it alone. So the wine, this is the opposite of Christianity. The wine has been transformed into water.
Yeah, well, okay, very nice.
As another proof against Christianity. What can I tell you guys?
Well, I think it's possible to say that even though it's considered water in the sense that it's batel, that it's not avodah zarah yayin neseh, the bracha would still be brei pri hagafen, because there'd be two separate concepts. One concept is the mahut, the essence of the thing, and another concept is the halachic status, the kosher, non-kosher status.
Okay.
The halachic, the essence of the thing is that it's wine. So
by the way, is that you speaking now?
Yes.
It's a terrific chiddush, but it also makes everything I say correct. It's a terrific chiddush.
I don't need to do that. It's obvious that everything you say is correct.
Thank you. No, but it's a good chiddush.
Yeah, it fits with what you're saying. You're Joel, very Joel.
Well, two things. One, I agree. I think that it would depend on if you thought that the wine turns into water or the wine turns into kosher wine, right? It turns from Isser to Heter, right? That's but I have a question if this opinion would go, I don't know if I've ever seen this, would go the other way, right? Let's imagine I had Isser wine, and I start pouring Heter water, start pouring water into it, right? The shogeg, or something like that. That do we say kama batil, and that thing can never be batel, right? The wine itself, right? That the water turns into Isser the whole way.
Presumably, yes. Presumably it goes both ways. But the other case that he was talking about was water into wine, where you'd have kosher wine and other water falling into it, and then it would become eventually water. Then it would be the opposite. The bracha would become shakol, and it would become, but it would still be kosher. It wouldn't be, even though the water was essentially us.
Yeah, but I mean, I think kama batel both is like a sense of you can kind of never oser like something kosher, and you can also never take that lach belach, and you can never take something that's asur lach and make it kosher even by accident, right? It always maintains its original status.
But I just want to make very clear to everybody that this is all not halach.
All theoretical.
Halacha is choser v'niyah. This is just the Ravid's acceptance of Rav Dimi or Rav Yochanan from the Gemara. a limited acceptance. Now I still have a really good. I still am not satisfied with the answer about why yayin b'yayin that's rejected, but everything else is not rejected. But what's the difference about yayin b'yayin? Min b'mino. And the Rivet, and actually, I don't think we'll have time to look at it, but it would be interesting to look at it. Maybe we will after the break. There's a Rivet in Perik Tetvav in the Rambam, where he basically says that min b'min. Well, I don't want to talk about it. I'll say it wrong.
Rav Nachum, you're cutting out a little bit.
I'm cutting out. Sorry. I'll just say it like this. You could just say like this, that by min b'mino, the Ravid holds Hanan, and therefore only in other words, the Ravid holds famously min b'min, only Hanan and min b'mino according to Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, Hanan does not exist according to the Ravid. According to the Ravid, again, the Ravid is an independent thinker, and the Ravid says there's no such thing as Hanan at all, even in Basar B'chal, no such thing as Hanan. It's only an opinion according to Rabbi Yehuda and Min B'mino. And therefore maybe this Gemara, maybe this is going according to Rabbi Yehuda, and this is Min B'mino, and therefore it's never batel, and therefore by yayin b'yayin, we don't say kama batel, because it's never batel. Anyway, it's not so clear. That's my bet. That's an answer, a technical kind of answer. But let's just.
I just have this statement though. It's Rebbe Yochanan in the name of Rav Dimi. Didn't we have a Gemara like Rebbe Yochanan doesn't hold Rebbe Yehuda, does he?
Right. It's a little. Yeah. It's right. It's a little problematic what I'm saying because even the Ravid kind of I think agrees that we don't hold like Rebbe Yehuda also. So then there's no such thing as Hanan at all. So then how would it take an effect here? Yeah, I agree with you. It's not really. It's wrong. It's a wrong shot. It's a wrong shot. But I was trying to think what it's min b'mino. What it's something special about it. It's min b'mino. Maybe it's like Rabbi Yehuda. Then why would the Ravid hold that? Yeah, it's not. I don't have a good. I don't quite understand it fully. Maybe it's more like what Rav Landis said. Anyway, let's take a break here. We'll come back in 5 minutes. Okay, so we're in the middle of the Beit Yosef. I'll just finish up the rest of the Beit Yosef. He goes on to say that the Ramban doesn't agree with this, and he says the line, once Rav Dimi Amar Rav Yochanan is rejected, he's fully rejected. And he brings that the Ramban and the Rashba both reject the Ravid. Okay, and then it starts for Da. The next section in the Beit Yosef starts for Da. You see that? See where it says V'da? There's a dark Vav Dalet Ayin. And he says V'da. Shafa Pishas Kamota Poskim Bedin Zeh Shelo Kedivrei Ravid Ein Lidchot Mipnei Kach Masha Ketav Rabbeinu B'Sof Siman Sadi Chet. So we learned Siman Sadi Chet. And what did it say there? It said like this, quote, Kol Sheyesh Shishim Keneged HaIsser Mevatlin Oto Afilu Ein HaShishim Kulo Heter. You can use various types of Isserim to mevatel each other. You could have like 59 heter plus one piece of pork and one piece of shellfish, and each one is mevatel, but each one has 60 against it. Even though against the shellfish is 59 heter and one isser, but it's still 60 against it. Because don't discount that. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Demashma misham. The Isser mitzaref the heter. You see there that you have the concept of Isser mitzaref the heter. So wait a second, over here, why don't we say Isser mitzaref the heter? The pork can join up with the heter. Levatel et Isser. The shani hatam. That taste is different. Shehem shnei mine Isser. There are two different flavors. Hilchach kol echad mitzaref im. By the way, I translate as flavor. It's a big discussion of whether it's two different kinds of categories of Isser, but I'm going to stick with the flavor idea. Shem shnei mine yisur. Hilcha kol echad mitzaref ima heter levatel et chavero. Aval hechad shnehem min echad ki achad. But if they're both the same flavor, is what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about like a piece of pork and another piece of pork, or yayin and a piece of yayin and more yayin. Matzah min et mino v'niyor. So that's this concept. That's another terminology that you should be familiar with. Matzah min et mino. The min finds its friend, v'niyor, and wakes up, and the two join together and become two pieces of pork. Ubahachi nicha, and now it makes sense. Shirabeinu afal pisha katav hayi b'simen tzadichet lo nimna meliktov zo. Now it makes sense that he says both these two different things because it's not contradictory. V'ken harosh paska lahi simen tzadichet, and the rosh agreed to it over in tzadichet, even though he also agreed against the Ravid here. Upaska lezeh b'perik yid anashe. Okay. He passed this idea. So in other words, don't think they're contradictory. Those two ideas are work hand in hand. Next section. Haticha iser shenafal b'shishim het deheter below the kirba ad shenafal acheret harezu asura imein beheter kedei levatel shtehen. Obviously, you need against both of them because there's two isurim that fell in. Aval im hekirba v'yada sheyesh beheter levatel lo v'levatla afilu im nafla acheret ein tzarich bittul keneged shtehen. Wait a second, that actually does seem to contradict, right? If another isser fell in, and then you knew about it, and then another isser fell in, you ein tzarich. I'm reading again. Ein tzarich bittul keneged shtehen. You don't need a bittul against both of them. The Tanan perich. Hey, the trumot, se'ah truma shenafa l'tov me'ah. So you have one sa that fell into 100 shel chulin. V'lo hispik lahagbiha, and you didn't remove one. You really had to remove one se'ah of the 101 to sort of matir the 100. And lo higbiha. Lo speak like bia ad shenafa acheret, and then another one fell in before you removed. Harezu asura, Rabbi Shimon mati, and Rabbi Shimon permits. Okay, umisayim b'tosefta b'meidavar marmurim kishelo yadaba. That's only if you didn't know about it. V'achar chak nafla, and then it fell. Aval yadaba v'achar kach nafla. But if you did know about it and then it fell, harezu muteret. Well, wait a second. Rav Shimon already matir, so it would be muteret even according to the Chachamim. Ad kan lashon hamordechai peperek hagoza. Let's see. V'ken pasach harambam peperek yud gimel ilchot trumot. V'ken katav beperish mishnah. Also the Rambam. V'Rabbeinu Shimshon piresh misham haYerushalmi. He explained the Yerushalmi from there. Behepach. He explained it the opposite. The lo iflagu elab de biyadaba. They only argued when they knew about it. In other words, and then the Chachamim aser. Aval below yadav. They didn't know in between that the one fell in and then the other fell in. They didn't know below yadaba. So it comes out according to the Rabbanan that it's always Asr. It comes out according to the Rabbanan, it's always Asr, it says the Tosfot. V'gam hevi atosefta zo, u'mesayim ba, v'chachamim omrim haramata mikadeshta. V'arayvit gam ken chalak al psak harambam. Nearly the afila Rambam ain't lilmod b'zeh mitrumat l'shar isurim. So wait a second. This seems don't learn. First of all, according to the second approach, it's usher. According to the Chachamim, it's always usher. So that means that we don't say we stick with our original psak that it is choser v'niyor. And he says, he says, don't learn from the Rambam, who might have been, he was lenient over there by the Truma. L'shar isurim, midelo hevi din zeh behilchot ma'achalot asurot. Because he didn't bring it over where, in our case, by isurim. In other words, it's a special din by Truma. Even according to the Rambam, it might be a special din by Truma, and therefore not relevant to our discussion. So basically, he just brought like a kind of a kasha. Maybe in Truma, you see that you do say kama batel, and he says, well, first of all, we don't paskin like that. Maybe we paskin like the Rabbanan, and the Rabbanan argue that you never do such a thing, and maybe we paskin, and even according to the Rambam, he only mentions it there by Truma, not here. Why would it be different by Truma? Anybody think of a svara why Truma should be different? By Truma, that Deah would help.
I mean, if you know you could just separate the truma, are we talking about that case of like, because I know we've talked about stuff with like truma and meiser that it's fixable. Although I could understand a mixture might not be fixable.
What we said was that if you knew that it fell in, it's muteret, even though the second one fell in, because it was like 1 in 100, really. The first time it fell in was 1 in 100, and the second time was 1 in 101. So both times it was mutter. Joel.
I think truma itself it's not like something changes. You physically tell the difference between truma or taste the difference between truma and non-truma. It's about a person's knowledge or thought process in the first place, right? Once you've piled up your grain, then it's required in truma. Once you've removed it, it takes your dot to say, hey, this is truma. I'm taking the truma out. So once something has become batel truma, your dot it's not truma anymore, right? It's all based on dot in the first place, I think.
Okay, I'll stick with that. Sounds good. All right, I want to go forward. Thank you for that. Let's look at the Shulchan Aruch. Yeah, Shulchan Aruch from Sif. We're going to do Zion. Let me get there. Sadi Tet. Sif Zion. Eitan, you want to read?
I can read, sure. Im nivla isur mu'atz l'toch kli kasher. Im darko shel kli lishtamesh bo.
Oh, sorry. Wait a second. I'm sorry. Not Zion. Vav.
Oh.
Sorry, my mistake.
Hold on a second. Okay. Isur shel divrehem ein ma'arvinoto biadayim kedei levatzlo. Ve'im asa kain b'mezid asur, aval im nafal me'atzmo ve'ein beheter kedei levatzlo, marbe alav u'mevatzlo. So if you have an isur that's derabanan, you can't purposefully mix it together with a in order to cancel it out with a heter. But if you did so on purpose, it's asur. But if it fell in on its own, and the heter doesn't have enough to cancel it, you can then add more heter in order to cancel out the isur.
Who is he paskening by? Who is he paskening like? I mean, I read you that list. You probably don't remember, but who is he paskening like?
I'm not sure.
Well, how is he? Remember what was the debate that upon which we were questioning? Well, we said about
the Rashba.
Right. The question was, does the Isser have to have the Isser that has a basis in Torah law? There's different kinds. Not all Rabbanans are created equally. And did he group them together? Isser shel divreihem. He says you can't do it in any case. But if it fell by itself, then you could.
Is the Rosh the Rosh?
No, it's not the Rosh. It is like the Rambam and the Rashba.
The Rashba.
That well, the Rashba by the end of his words, like basically, or the Rambam and Rabbeinu Simcha also. Basically, like the Rambam, Rabbeinu Simcha, and the Rashba, that there's all rabbinic things you can marbe. Okay. Go on.
ויש אומרים, דאם לבטל איסור דרבנן, או להוסיף עליו, כמו באיסור דאורייתא, וכן נוהגים.
So that is the who? That tour already brought this opinion. The tour, you saw this in the tour.
The Rosh.
That's the Rosh.
I mean, I cheated because the Haggah cites the Rosh.
The Haggah says Rosh?
Yeah.
It says tour b'shem harosh, yes. Ubatoras Habayis, right. Wahago Sharidura, Beseder, and Varan, everybody. So basically, but LaRoche is the one that we saw in the tour. So basically, either we reject it entirely or we accept it entirely. And there's no mention of whether it's a Isser that has a basis, an Isser D'Rabbanan that has a basis in a Torah law. We're not as a basis in a Torah law. We didn't really discuss that. The Ken Noagin ve'ein l'shanu. Okay, so we're machmir. The Ashkenazim are machmir. The Sephardim could be mekel, that you could be marbe. Interesting concept. Okay, ve'isr, go ahead.
איסור שנתבטל, כגון שהיה 60 כנגדו ונתווסף בו אחר כך, מן האיסור הראשון, חוזר וניעור ונאסר. לא שנה מין במינו, לא שנה מין בשאינו מינו, לא שנה יבש, לא שנה לח, לא שנה נודע בינתיים, או לא נודע בינתיים. Hold on a second. כזית חלב, sorry.
Chalav, actually, I have written here.
החלב, שנפל למים ונתבטל בשישים, ואחר כך נפל מן המים לקדרה של בשר, מותר אף על פי שאין בבשר שישים נגד החלב, שהרי נתבטל במים וכל כיוצא בזה.
Okay. So he's saying that if you have a little bit of milk that fell into water and it was batel, and then the water fell in, let's say a piece of meat fell into the water. So you don't say, well, the meat finds the milk, and they join up, and there's you have basar b'chalal, because the milk was already batel. But now you can say, what's the chiddush? Obviously, the milk is batel. So, if you look at Shach Kafbet, he says about halfway towards the end, about halfway, Mishum de lakaman siman reish tzadi tet. Nitpaer de heter beheter lo shayach bittel. So in certain cases, heter beheter, there's no such thing as bittel. So you might say water and milk is heter beheter. So there's no such thing as bittel. Says no. There are cases where we say basically it's not a rule, it's not a luck, it's not a how do you say a hard and fast rule. Sometimes we say there is heter beheter batel, and that's the case here, where the water is batel, even though the water and the milk are both heterim, we can still say the milk is batel. Why? Because we're interested in tam here. And once the milk has been dispersed among a lot of water, the tam of it is not there enough. And it's different from the case in Reish Tzadik Tet, which is talking about shatnez, where we say that even a single string of linen in a huge beged of wool is not batel, because we say there because it's heter beheter. That each one on its own is heter. There is different because we're not concerned about tam over there.
Sorry, what shach are you reading?
Kaf bet.
Halfway through.
I should have jumped in the middle. It was kaf bet. It says that I just read like towards the second to last line or third to last line. The heter beheter lo shayich bit. That's what we say over there. All right, let's go back. Let's go back because there's a couple of shachs I want to look at. Let's look at Shach Yud Tet. Good to be seen. Did we see? Wait, no, did we see? We saw. I skipped. I didn't do. Did I do 13? I did 13 and I did 14. Yeah, we did 13, 14. All right, so we're in Shach Yud Tet, which is actually in Yana Dioma. What in Yana Dioma? What's holiday is coming up?
Hanukkah.
Hanukkah. In what city do they celebrate Hanukkah?
Modi'in.
No, what city did Tom Lehrer celebrate Hanukkah?
Oh, Santa Monica.
There you go. So he just all of a sudden he just died recently, Tom Lehrer, and you know he did an amazing thing before he died. He said all the rights to all of his songs. He relinquishes all ownership of them, and therefore nobody can claim in the future that they own them or something. So they've been released. Okay. Anyway, so Yud Tet here, Joel. I know you like this, so you read Yud Tet.
All right, good. I do like this one. This is in the Shulchan Aruch.
Yeah, you got to set it up. Set it up. What are we talking about?
Shulchan Aruch says that if it's an Isur Derabanan, he has no qualifications, although Shach earlier takes issue with that. If it fell on its own, in other words, not that you did it, you put it in there and not knowing, but it fell on its own, the Isur Derabanan. And you don't have enough to be batel, you can add to the heter in order to mevatel it. Okay, that's the setup here.
You can mosif. You can do mosif alav to mevatel because it's isur where by isur derabanan. Okay, so go ahead. V'kasha.
All right, v'kasha de be'orchot chayim, siman, etc.
No, orach chayim, not orchot chayim.
Oh, you're right, be'orach chayim. You're right. This is Hilchot Chanukah. Yeah, sorry. Satam ha-mechaber. It's got to be because mechaber. The mechaber, he unqualified wrote the following, right? V'chatav mutar hashemen shebener Chanukah shintarev b'shemen acher, right? Ve'ein bo shishim levat lo. All right. Yesh mi shomer she'ein lo sifa alav levat lo. Ad kan lo sheno. So there.
No, not mutar. Wait a second. You read that wrong. Sorry.
Not mutar. Mi shomer. Where did I say?
From the beginning. Read
okay. Yes, moter probably. Moter hashemen shebener.
Right. What does that mean, moter hashemen?
You have more shemen Chanukah than you have shemen acher.
No. Okay, wait. Sorry, I'm giving you a hard time. Let me try.
Well, I'm gonna take it.
Try again. Not to get more shemen. The
moter. Leftover. Sorry, leftover shemen. The leftover. It's yes.
Thank you. The motar hashemen shebener Chanukah. So what's the case? You have your Hanukkah menorah with oil.
So it's muksa l'chag.
And it's the last day. Wait, let's say it like this. It's the 8th day of Hanukkah.
Mm-hmm.
And this oil is now, you're not going to burn it tomorrow because Hanukkah's over. And it's the 8th day in the morning. And you look in your candle, and you look in your your cup, and you see that half the oil is unburnt. What do you do with this oil? What can you do with it? The leftover oil that's in your cup on the 8th day in the morning.
Yeah. So, and then it gets mixed in with other oil.
That by accident it mixed with other oil.
So
now you've got partially Hanukkah oil and partially regular oil.
So, and it's this oil is muksa at the moment, right? It's muksa l'chag. So l'chag.
Ve'ein bo shishim levatlo, and it's not. There isn't. It didn't mix with enough oil to be batel. If it was 60, then fine. But there's not 60.
So he says you can't add to it in order to. It seems to be against what we have here that you can't in that case add, even though it's an Isur Derabanan. So
he says yesh mi. He says he quotes that there is someone who says that you can't leave it. You can't add to it exactly.
Yeah. So, all right. That's the end of foot, he says. V'harei, now we got to play it out. V'harei Chanukah inu elami derabanan. Right? And Chanukah is a derabanan, so therefore the Isur, the oil must be derabanan. Gam beveit Yosef sham, lo yavi shum posek shecholek al zeh. And there in the Beit Yosef, he he doesn't even bring anyone who disagrees with this.
He brings it this Yesh Omrim that he can't do it, but he doesn't bring any other opinion. So apparently that's the only opinion.
But and he says V'shema yesh lechalek. Maybe we can distinguish here. Dehata or there really. Dehatam kivan dehuksel mitzvato. Maybe because muksa for a mitzvah is something a little bit more stringent, and he's going to push back on this. He says v'dochak, but that's a little bit difficult. He says maybe a mitzvah is a little more stringent, so maybe even a mitzvah derabanan, you can't something that's muksa mitzvah derabanan, you can't be mevatel be mosif alav. All right, but he says that's difficult. I don't like that. All right, ve'od deha yesh mishomer. Who Maharami Rotenberg, right? And who's the Mishomer? It's the Maharami Rotenberg. Shevia Tursham, right? Who the tour brings there. Umuchrechet delatzfirale lechalek behachi, right? And he doesn't. The Maharami Rotenberg doesn't seem to make that kind of distinction, right?
Between what? Between muksa
mitzvah, muksa mitzvah, and any other derabanan,
and any other derabanan, right? He just at the katav. What did he actually say?
Tavsham v'lo dami leitzim shenishru min hadekel latoch hatorah. He says it's not similar to the case in Beitza with the extra wood the wood that falls off the tree into your oven, right? Yom Tov. Shemar be'alehem etzim muchanim umvatlan. He says it's not similar to that case. Why? The shani hatam she'ein mehen. He says that the only difference is like what we saw. Some of the opinions that the case in Beitza was that you're not directly benefiting from those.
Who was that? Who? Anybody else? Who said that?
Oh, not me. Okay.
Yeah, anybody but you. Anybody? Come on, we saw it's in the tour.
Good person for him to quote. So.
Who does the tour a lot of times quote? Reuven.
It's the Rosh. Adoniyavi.
Exactly. His father. So he says the so why are we quoting the Rosh?
Oh, because
in other words, the Maharami Rottenberg is like the Rosh. He agrees with the Rosh, which means never say it's a unique case, the case of the wood, and then don't compare it to anything. And therefore, Hanukkah should be, if you're quoting him by Hanukkah, so he's saying it's like this, Mr. Beis Yosef. If you're quoting the Maharami Rottenberg by Hanukkah, then take his opinion all the way through and quote it here.
So, he says, the Maharam finishes up. He says, no, here you would actually be benefiting. You like the combined Hanukkah oil and non-Hanukkah oil, and you get light. Right, you're actually benefiting directly from it. So
how does he understand? How does the Maharami Rottenberg understand mikle kale that the Gemara says that you're not benefiting because you're burning it? I can say the same thing by the Hanukkah light. I'm not benefiting. The oil that I'm benefiting from is the oil that's burnt.
It's a second.
At the moment the light is giving me light, the oil that created that light is already gone.
Yeah, but here you're in the case of the bread or the cooking, you're benefiting from it's a secondary benefit. It's not directly from the burning. It's the thing that's you're benefiting. You're eating the food that was cooked by the burning.
Exactly. So that's what I explained earlier. That's what I was saying. There's two ways to understand the Gemara. The Maharami this is my Chiddush. The Maharami Rottenberg understands the Gemara as talking about the bread, eating it much later, whereas everybody else, the way I would have understood it is that it's mikle kale means that at the moment you're not benefiting from it because it's burnt up. But the Maharam says no. That would be called benefiting from it. And that's the case of the Hanukkah menorah. But by the wood, it's talking about eating the bread the next morning or whatever, some later in the day. And that's called you're only benefiting when it's gone. So that's how he learns the Gemara. That's my Chiddush of how to explain the Gemara according to the Maharam. Okay, go on.
Ve'im ita, and if it were the case that muksa lemitzvah was different, right? He should have said that directly. He should have said this is a different case, not because of the that it's being burnt up. It's not being you're not benefiting. He shouldn't have said the difference is because in Beitza you're not benefiting directly from the thing because it's burning up. Here you're benefiting directly. He should have said because it's muksa lemitzvah. But sorry, right. He just said I don't know the answer. So.
Does anybody give an answer? I know the Taz. I don't want to read the Taz, but I know the Taz also asks us. I think does he give an answer? Anyway, I don't think so. But the point is,
explain a difference about the Mikla Kale as being the one there as being a Devar Sheyesh Lo Matirin. But he like, gives a different distinction.
right.
He says there it's we're extra stringent because that's a Devar Sheyesh Lo Matirin, which is a category we'll get into more, but something that because it can become permitted, we're actually extra stringent with while it is forbidden. There specifically, we have
but that's
of needing it to be,
Mikle Kala. So that would be reason even more to be made by the Hanukkah light. Except that you could say that Hanukkah light is also, it's a very big question. We're going to
but we
talk
don't
about
say
Yesh
right.
You
We
could
generally
say
don't
that
say
it's Yesh
Devar Sheyesh Lo
Matirin
Matirin.
because next Hanukkah.
But we don't usually say that. We'll get into this. But generally, if something will only become mutter by the time that it's useless, we don't consider that to be a
It's not
device.
useless.
The
The oil will
Shaman
last.
Chanukah has a special din of always being muksa, even afterwards. In fact, the only thing you can do with it, and that's, by the way, also a halacha of the Neiros, in case you use candles, is that if you used it partially, and that stuff, the red and the green and the blue that's still stuck, you're not supposed. You're supposed to burn it up. In other words, it has a din of muksa forever, and it
Muksa
has
the mitzvah.
What?
You're saying muksa the mitzvah, like the Shach suggested. But he said he didn't, but he rejected in the end. But yeah, that's the best. That's the only answer we got. That's the only answer we have to work with. And it's muksa the mitzvah, and therefore we're more strict by it.
No, but I don't even know if any other. Okay, fine. I don't know if any other halacha of muksa mitzvah has the Easter that the Hanukkah. I mean, look, it's only mitzvah we have on Hanukkah.
The decorations of the sukkah. The din of the decorations of the sukkah after Sukkot.
Yeah.
They're mutar. They're mutar from Farash. So's the lulav and the etrog, right?
Yeah. So they're only temporarily muksa the mitzvah. Okay. Anyway, interesting. Interesting. I would say, if I had to say, I would say that the Shach seems to prefer. Which halacha does he seem to prefer? Or does he seem to prefer the one over in Orach Chaim or the halacha here? I would say he prefers the halacha here. He doesn't seem to like the chumrah, the stringency, or at least if, according to the Mechaber, I mean, he is going like probably he paskins personally like the Ramah anyway. In which case, we don't have this whole din. This is really just a kasha on the Mechaber. Okay, that's Yud Tet. Let's look at Kaf. Hoser v'niyar. Where was this going on? This is saying in the Ramah, he said, Isser shenit patel kagon shahaya shishim keneged v'nitvasef bo achar kach mina isser harishon choser v'niyar. Oh, that's the din of choser v'niyar. What does he say in Kaf? He says, Hainu dafka b'min isser echad. Oh, we saw this already. Aval b'shnei mini isser shecholkim tamam. They have different tastes. Kol echad mevatel tam chavero. Kamo shitpaser sof Siman tzadi chet. Okay. Kaf aleph. He says lo shna noda. He says lo shna. He says yavish lo shna noda v'lo noda. What's lo shna? That's choser v'nier. If choser v'nier, it doesn't matter if you knew about it. I have a volunteer to read this. Kaf aleph. Lexi, you want to read it?
Sure.
Okay, but we're going to read now. I don't think we're going to read all of it. We're just going to read the beginning of it.
So Loshna Noda B'intay Mulo. Ken Katab Parts Chatat Klav Herkei Dal B'Shem Maharai B'Hagahot Shari Dora. Aval B'Emet Mashma Delo Katav Shem Maharai B'Hagahot Shari Dora. Defilu Noda B'intayim Asur. Ela Isur Shenotin Tam. Right, that it seems like this idea of if someone just became aware in between, even if they then, are shogeg again, that it's usher, that only applies to something that gives flavor. Dikatav sham v'ravia oster afilu yada. Yired misfarat ushri ka'amarla. The svara gedola hi. Kevan denitra beha isor, harehu karhu umargishin hatam v'chule ad kan lashonot. Because it's written there, in the Haggadah Torah, we quotes the Rav Yah and says the Rav Yah is oser even if the person just knows about the mixture, and says it's because
knowing about the mixture would be a reason to matir, right? Because if we knew about the mixture, then it's already batel, and then maybe we wouldn't say choser v'niyar. And the Ramah is saying no, even if he knew about it, it's still going to be choser v'niyar.
Right. So he's saying that this is specifically because the notion is about the idea of choser v'niyar. In fact, that it's about when the isser increases, harehu kar margishin hatam, like it's recognizable and you can in fact taste the flavor.
But it's only with things that have tam. There's only the things that are usher because of tam.
About to distinguish, right? Because that was him quoting the Haggadah Torah and explaining that seems to be specifically with regards to nitinat tam. Aval b'isar yavish b'yavish b'mino shnit batel barov k'shenoda tula mitzaref lesor. Right? In the case of yavish b'yavish, where that's min b'mino, where there's simply no flavor being given, and where we say that it's batel barov even d'Rabbanan, then once the mixture is made known, anything that's added from then on is not going to combine with the original isser in order to usser the full mixture. Because since in the case of yavish b'yavish min b'mino, both on the D'Oraita and the D'Rabbanan level, it is batel barov. Imkain kavarni.
Therefore, right.
It has been totally battled. In fact, the initial isser that has been battled, it seems like should help nullify another isser that fell in.
And who does that sound like?
That
we saw today?
From today?
Yeah, we spent time on the Ravid. Sounds like the Ravid. In other words, it's batel and it stays batel.
Right. I mean,
but only in yavish b'yavish and noda.
Because there is, the debates that we'll see with like the case of the 3 pieces of meat or whatnot, which is one of our classic examples of this, where when they're mixed together, and there are the debates about how you can eat them.
Right.
Also sort of aligns with like the Rosh, right? Where the Rosh there is the only one who says you could eat all 3 of them at once, and it's totally fine because he's like, it's batel.
Right.
There is no isser left there. He's like, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to act like there's some isser here and we just don't know what it is. He's like, it has been batelt. It no longer has the identity of isser. And so you just have totally mutter things in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want
me to go on a bit more? Yeah, a little bit more.
Then again, the K'titnan ha'orla ma'ala ta'orla. Right, again, the idea that the nullified thing could now help nullify future isser umafarish b'Yerushalmi dahayinu benoda. And it's explained in the Yerushalmi that that's in a case where the mixture was sort of realized in the meantime. Mihu be'ashiri perek
Giranashe.
Mashma lahedya da afilu yavesh b'yavesh b'mino chol v'ne'asar afilu noda. Seems to imply that even with Yavish B'Yavish, when it's even with the same type, it can end up, being reawakened and ussering things, even when the person already has known about the mixture in between. Right? Oh, that's the interesting thing. The Rosh does think that while it's bataled, but he still does sort of have this notion of choser v'neor here. So it's kind of an interesting qualification to his position. But they're saying, the Shach is pointing out that this thing about the orla ma'aleh to orla seems to not fit very well with the notion that yavish b'yavish min b'mino can be choser v'neor, because there it really seems to imply that the bateld isser is nullifying the additional isser that's fallen in. וכמה שכתב בספרי, כתבתי שם דעיקר כפירוש הרש פרק ב' אורלה משנה ג' דאפילו לרבנן בשאר איסורים ביבש ביבש, כל שאין נותן טעם הידיעה גורמת התר, ושוב אין חוזר ונאסר. that even according to the Rabbanan, Bishar Yisurim beyavish beyavish, when you have just dry mixture, anytime when there is no flavor that can be imparted, then knowledge of the mixture, renders the whole thing mutter, and it's not going to go back to being usser.
Okay, let's skip. Now we're gonna skip to the very end of Kaf Bet. Just about 6 lines from the end in my print, which says "Begam divrei harat marshal." It's about 6 narrow lines from the end in my print.
In Kuf Bet or Kuf Aleph?
Kuf Aleph, sorry. Yeah, we were reading Kuf Aleph, yeah. Kaf Aleph. Kaf Aleph at the end, right before Kaf Bet.
גם מדברי המהרש"ל שם, יראה כדעת הרב, דאפילו ביבש מינו ונודע, חוזר ונאור ונאסר. It seems the Maharshal holds like the Ramah, that even when it's min b'mino, yavish b'yavish, we think, and even when you know about the mixture between the falling of the different isers, that it can be choser v'neor. Then he says, "Umay b'tela dati neged datam ubeprat shani makel v'hem machmirim." He's like, "Look, I am the minority and they're the majority, and since I'm makel and they're machmir, I can't firmly rule in my direction since I am outnumbered."
Right. I think it's a nice line that he's saying, "Batel dati neged datam." In other words,
and then he qualifies it by saying, "Aken behefsed meruba kahai gavna efshar lahakel mahanach tamim dileel." He's like, therefore, I'm not going to say my opinion should be the default, but in a case of hefsed meruba, you can rely on it.
So we'll stop there. Exactly. So you see that he tries to prove basically that in Yavish B'Yavish we could hold kind of like the Ravi, and once as long as there's Yediyah. But in the end, he says the Marshal is like major posik. If the Marshal and the Ramah agree, then the Shach is not going to go against, and except in Hefsed Meruba. So we see this sort of peeping through this idea from the Ravid of once it's batel, it's really batel. We're trying to sort of resurrect that idea. All right, in a little bit of time we have left, let's just look at Zion. He says like this. I'll read Zion. Im navla isur mu'at l'toch kli kasher. So you have a big kli kasher and a little bit of isser was absorbed into it, but you remove the food that's just now absorbed isser in the pot. So obviously you should do hagala on the pot. You should do boiling water and prepare the pot. Im darko shel oto kli lishtamesh bo b'shefa. If this kli you always use is a large amount, such that even if the flavor b'shefa, sorry, I'll read it a little bit more. Im darko shel oto kli lishtamesh bo b'shefa heter, mutar lishtamesh bo lechatchila, kevan sha'isser mu'at, v'efshar lavo lidei netina tam. Since anytime you use this pot, you always your spaghetti pot, and you'll always boil up a whole pot of spaghetti in that pot, and therefore the little bit of isser that's there will never have an effect because it'll always be batel b'shishim. So lefichach isser mashu shenivla b'kedera o b'toch kankanim kikiyotze behen mutar l'shtamesh bo lechatchila afilu b'ben yomov. Even if it's the same day, you could use it. If it's like a pot that you sometimes use for a lot and sometimes use for a little, then already we can't do it. It has to be that this pot, most or almost all of its usage is for large amounts. Like, for example, what? Like kakara, a bowl. It's funny that he brings that example, but a bowl that you maybe sometimes put a little bit of food in, sometimes put more food in. You can't even if you're going to say, well, this pot I'll only use it for shefa. No. We're worried that we're not going to let you do that. It has to be a pot that you always would use for shefa. Not that you're going to now make a newest statement. Asur l'shtamesh afilu b'shefa gezerah. It's a gezerah. Shema yishtamesh bo b'devar muat. Because maybe you'll forget and you'll use it with the devar muat. V'yavoli denetina tam. Now this halacha is royally rejected, actually, by the Ashkenazim. Here, if you look at the very end of the, is it the Taz, the last Taz, the very last sentence in the Taz, the very last Taz in the Siman, he says, "V'achi kaimelan lechumra de lo mahani kli gadol b'makom she'ein pogem." In other words, if it's not a tavar that's pagum, then you can't use a kli gadol. Fine. Well, that's another interesting little halacha. As yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. We don't paskin like that, or at least certainly the Ashkenazim don't paskin like that. It's funny that the Ramah doesn't say anything, but as I recall, we don't paskin like that. Actually, we have just another minute. Go back. We'll see where he comes from in the Beit Yosef. Look back at the Beit Yosef Zion. Beit Yosef Zion is a very short little piece, and he says, just bringing the source. Katav Rivash b'tshuva Siman Shin Mem Tet b'shem Ravid. Back to the Ravid. The kedera shabala tipatam o chalav o chelev mevatlin oto lechatchila. So you see why it's connected to our discussion, because it's like you're doing bittul lechatchila. But you could cook in it, and therefore mevatel the tam of lechatchila. Kevan diefshar lavolidei natina tam lola lemiuto, because it's so small. The kenami im bala yoter yoter im bala yoter kolshin of im, and also if it absorbed even more than a drop. Kolshin afal lekli she'ein regilim lishtamesh bo ela b'tavshil merubeh. Anything that you only use for large volumes. V'lo yavoli de netinatam aval im nafal lekli she'efshar lishtamesh bo tavshil mu'at, that you sometimes it's possible to use for a small amount. V10 tam, and then it would give 10 isser the tocha tavshil asur levat lo lechatchila gezera atu tavshil mu'at. Maybe next time you use for a small amount sheyeh bo netina tam, and then it will give flavor. So you can't use it on a one-time basis for a large thing. V'katav Rabbeinu devarim ele b'siman kaf the kuf kaf bet b'shem arash. Okay, so that's that last din. Okay, so good. We finished the Siman. Questions? Yeah, Ori.
I remember we studied something about like a kli cheres, though, maybe could be treated like chanan, which would really be a different case. You know what? I think so. Rav Joel, you'll probably
this is shar.
this.
It could be. This could be that the Mechaber is writing, and he's talking about chelev or dam, and that would be shar surim. There would be no chanan there.
I think, yeah. But I remember it also being in a case where the spoon went through two steps, so that like a chanan thing happened in the spoon, like it went through a mutter thing and an asr thing, and it happens, and now it has the ability to give taste every single time in a chanan sort of way. This would sort of.
But that was, I think, with milk and meat. I think that was with milk and meat.
Right, with milk and meat would make the most sense because it would be really the paradigm of chanan.
But here we're talking about just a stam isser. And we're talking about the pot, presumably was like a parv pot. We're not thinking about what was in the pot before. We're just thinking at tipav isser. So there'll be no.
Also, that was like a spoon.
Right.
Like it was a small kli, which would mean you could never assume.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of proportional bit.
Excellent. All right. So just to summarize, we discussed a couple topics. The main topics were bittul lechatchila when there's already been tarovet, right? And then what kinds of isers? Is it only isser? It's obviously only isser derabanan that you could mosif alav, and which kinds of isser derabanan we mentioned. Yeah, that was the main topic that we discussed. Okay, next week is Lexi gonna do Siman Kuf Aleph.
Yep. חתיכה יתכבד. We'll send sources out to you.
Very interesting topic. Okay, Isha Koyach to everybody. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.